Okay, let's just have a look here. Okay, cool. I think we're live, I think we're good. Alright, let's get started. Thanks for joining me. Anybody who's been here before, anybody who's new, hopefully you enjoy this. For the next hour or so, I'm going to be doing a little bit of drawing. Tonight I'm going to work on developing a few ideas for some monster character designs. All of these tutorials over the next few weeks are at the request of kids at kind of various schools I've worked in. So I spend a lot of my time kind of travelling around the country, working in schools, teaching kids to draw comics and cartoons and all that kind of stuff. And one of the questions I always kind of get is, how do I sort of initially come up with ideas for characters? And it's, I suppose it's not the simplest question to answer. It can kind of come in a variety of ways, really. Sometimes I'll know exactly what I'm going to sketch right straight from the beginning, and I'll just kind of start drawing. Sometimes I just start kind of throwing some drawings out on a piece of paper and digitally tonight. It's kind of come up with a few random shapes and sort of like see where it leads. And for me, that's kind of that's always the most sort of interesting way to draw. Is just to kind of start off with just doing a few scribbles, just scribbling shapes and ideas, and some of them might work, some of them might not. And as soon as you see something interesting, as soon as something starts to sort of develop, you sort of see where it goes. So a lot of the time for any character design that I draw, it'll start off with there being sort of 20, 30, 40 just random sketches that don't necessarily make all that much sense. And then you pick sort of one or two of these that you're happier with, and then sort of develop those. And it's not always the way. Sometimes I'll know exactly what I'm going to draw before I start, but I normally find that the best characters, the best sort of designs come when you don't really know what you're doing. You just sort of start drawing and sort of see what happens. Okay, I'm just checking we're actually good here. Let's have a look. Everything looks live, everything looks good. Nice. Everything seems to be working. Cool. If you like the music you hear tonight, check out Thomas Ragsdale online. This is by him. A good friend of mine does some brilliant music, so you can see down in the bottom right corner there. Okay, let's have a look. I mean, whenever you're developing characters, it can help to have sort of an idea in mind when you first start off. So you might know you want it to be a kind of a cute character or a scary character or whatever. tonight I think we're going to do sort of a mixture of the two. We want something kind of creepy, but sort of not too frightening. So there's a few kind of nice ideas there. Not overly happy with these yet. Let's just have a think. For anybody who's just kind of starting off, I'm trying to shrink a few of those down. Stick those up there for now. For anybody who's just kind of starting off drawing, and is literally just on the basics, start with some simple shapes. Start with some circles. Start putting the circles together. Lay them over each other. So it looks. So you've got a body, you've got a head. What kind of eyes do you want? Do you want little tiny eyes? Do you want big eyes? Little tiny pupils. Do you want big legs? Do you want small legs? You might want skinny little legs. You might want big fat legs. I mean, I'm working digitally tonight, but whenever possible, whenever I'm sketching up sort of initial ideas, I tend to work in pencil. It's a nicer way to work. The other thing I kind of teach kids when I'm sort of traveling around is not to throw any mistakes, any random little scribbles and doodles. Never rub them out. Never throw them out, because you don't know where kind of the next decent idea is going to come from. So I'm not too sure about that guy, but we can. Not too keen on that one. We'll just stick him on there. There we go. So let me think. So again, just try something a bit different. You've done circles. Try something that's kind of a bit sort of longer. See how that works. Does this guy even want legs? Maybe he does. Just want legs. Maybe just kind of a big, thick thigh on the back. And you got your little feet down the front. Not sure what that is. And just from kind of starting off on those sort of basic shapes, you can start breaking stuff up. You can start adding in details, and that's when you start to see sort of characters come together. And again, not really that keen on that one. Stick him up there. Again, I quite like this guy. This guy's looking pretty cool. So let's see if we can do something else with that. So I want a similar kind of shape. So he's a bit of a sausage. Yeah, you got his head up at the top. I think maybe making his head a bit bigger might work. See, he's got these big sort of grasshopper eyes. Maybe something a bit more interesting on the belly there. No, I think the legs kind of work. Keep them all together as one. So he's got his big chunky legs. It's not too bad. Again, all of this, just not worrying too much about all the guidelines and the mistakes and the overlapping, and I mean that's what adds to it. I mean, for me, that's where some of the best ideas can come from, is when you make these daft little mistakes and you've got bits and pieces kind of that you didn't really plan on. Especially when you're sketching like this, I could quite happily spend hours just sketching most of the time you have to turn those ideas into an actual finished drawing. So. Let's give him some creepy little teeth in there. Step back in the mouth a little bit. Okay, and this guy's starting to get a little bit of personality about him. I think I quite like him. Yeah, he's not too bad. Not too bad. I think maybe we can do something with this. Okay, cool. We're going to stick with this guy. So let me just draw a line around him. Copy him out to another layer, get rid of everything else, and then we can look at this guy in a little bit more detail. So once you've got this basic sort of sketch of something that you like, at this stage you could go straight in and start outlining things and start thickening up the lines, but that's the last thing I want to do really. We want to work on this a little bit more in the sketch stage so we can get it to the point where we're really happy with it, and then start thickening up those lines and coming up with like your finished drawing. At the moment there's still a way to go. So on your layer here on the right, at the moment we can dim this down. It's the advantage of working digitally. You can change the opacity of the layers. If you're working on paper, just sketch light. It's a really important thing to learn when you're sketching. And again, if you're just starting out, or if you're a kind of a young kid who's just kind of getting into drawing, learning to draw lightly is actually quite difficult. I mean, you automatically, when you first time you pick up a pen, you stab it onto a piece of paper, you're making a big, thick black mark. And to get out of that when you're first learning to draw is quite a tricky thing to do. So it's worth practicing just resting the pencil on the paper, just brushing over the paper and making it light and mark as possible. I mean, if you're sketching on a piece of paper, the best way to sort of think of it, how kind of light sort of guidelines should be, is if the person next to you can see it, that's absolutely fine. But if somebody sat on the other side of the room, or somebody sat kind of the opposite side of the table can see it, then you've probably sketched it a little bit too dark. You want to keep it really nice and light. Then when you do go in with those extra layers of sketching, it doesn't matter about those guidelines. You don't have to rub anything out. You just leave them there. Okay, so let's go back to this guy. We want to get a little bit more into him, really. So let's have a look. But his eyes, I'm going to feel the bags under the eyes there. Just make it a little bit more interesting than just these kind of simple eyes. Yeah, a little bit of texture onto the body. Try this guy, looking hairy, see what it comes out like. Not entirely sure we're going to stay with this, but we'll see. Not too bad. Okay. And another tutorial that I'm going to be doing probably later this week. I'm going to show kind of a few really simple ways to draw different sets of eyes and different mouths. I mean, this is specifically for beginners kind of getting into cartoons. It's going to be, I'm going to do the live broadcast kind of during school time. So if any schools want to hook on and kind of and take part and watch along, it's similar to the kind of stuff I teach when I go around schools. Because I mean, drawing eyes and drawing mouths is quite an important thing to learn when you're drawing characters, and it also scares people off a little bit. But there's a few really simple techniques. You can effectively draw most kind of basic expressions with a combination of 6 different mouths and 6 different eyes. So by learning those basic eyes and those basic mouths. You can then exaggerate bits and pieces, make them bigger and smaller, and change things yourself. But as a starting point, those 6 eyes and 6 mouths let you show most expression. So in a future tutorial, like I say, probably sometime this week, I'm going to run through those. And on that note, if there are any kind of schools, any pupils kind of watching along and want to learn anything specific, or to be honest, anybody watching along and wants to see anything specific, just give us a shout, drop us a message, drop us a comment, let us know what you want to see, and I'll make sure to put it into a future tutorial. One of the other things that can be really useful when you're sketching up ideas is to bring in references. So I mean, have a look around at stuff. There's nothing wrong with kind of taking ideas from like, real things. So I mean, you look at this guy. Is kind of a grasshopper and a lizard and a snake and a dinosaur, and there's all sorts in there. It's only by looking at different animals, looking at different creatures, even looking at the way that people draw and kind of come up with ideas, and learn from that. I mean, somebody who shuts himself away and doesn't look at other people's work or doesn't look at just things generally is never going to improve as an artist. Okay, there we go. Starting to look kind of cool. Let's get a few little details in there. Okay, let's have a look at this guy's hands down here. Okay, we're going for these oversized hands. Again, in some future tutorials, I'll cover a few bits and pieces about drawing hands and all that stuff. A lot of people don't like drawing hands. They're actually not that bad if you learn a few sort of simple techniques. They can be quite fun to draw. Again, like anything, it's down to practice. So anybody who is drawing along and going to be trying some of this stuff, just kind of don't give up, keep practicing with it. These broadcasts are going to be fairly regular from now on. Again, when I'm working, I get quite a lot of requests to do this kind of thing, so I've been meaning to do this for quite a long time now. So there's going to be a mixture of these random late night sort of doodles like this, where I'm basically just going to draw whatever, and there's going to be a lot of stuff on during the day as well that is specifically for schools and beginners. So hopefully we can get kind of a few schools hooking on live and watching along with us, maybe working along with us. You can just see on the bottom there, when you put in the hair along the bottom of the foot, it's a simple little thing, just kind of spread out to the sides. It's just sort of grounding your character, making it look like it's actually stood on something. It almost becomes kind of a shadow underneath the character, rather than just drawing a straight line across the bottom of the foot. It's just got to float in the middle of nowhere. Okay, well, we've got this guy. We don't really want to leave it there. Okay, so this is all about kind of developing different ideas for monsters. So we're now going to take this guy and we're going to develop it even further. This guy's pretty good. I quite like it. We could keep going, adding a bunch more detail, a bunch more shading, and whatever. But we'll maybe do that another time. For now, we're going to just duplicate this layer. Drag it across next to him. Let's stick that down, the opacity to about 35-36%. So it's nice and light. Let's add another layer. So we're drawing over the top. And then we can sort of develop this guy even further. And again, this is what it's all about. Sort of developing your ideas beyond your first idea. Your first idea might be good, it might end up being the best idea you've got. But if you don't kind of explore different ideas, you're never going to know. So you might end up chucking all these next ones out. But it's worth trying, because you might come up with something that's even better. Okay, so this next guy, let's have a look. We want to use the same basic shape. Again, I'm just going to stick that down a little bit lower, down to like 28%. Be a bit more comfortable drawing over that. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's try something a bit different. There we go. I'm gonna make this guy a little bit nastier. So again, this basic shape of the eyes, I'll get into this much more in a future tutorial, but you can see the shape of the eyes there is basically a V shape. Again, there are six basic eyes, 6 basic mouths for anybody beginning on cartoons, and angry eyes is basically a V shape. You can separate them out, you can change them, you can make them taller, longer, more V-shaped. But essentially a V shape gives you an angry set of eyes, and it's that kind of like simple little thing that when you're first starting out is sort of really handy to just remember to pick up on. But that's another tutorial. We'll get onto that soon. For now, with this guy, let's have a look. Quite liking the bags under the eyes; they look pretty cool. Let's just emphasise them even more. So I want this guy to starting to look really haggard. Cool. And already it looks a lot more sort of nasty than the guy on the left. If you just bring your pupils up a little bit, so they're just sort of tucked in behind the eyelids, it just gives them a little bit more of a sinister look. It's peering out from behind his eyelids rather than just being completely exasperated like the guy on the left. I'm going to stick with the hairy look because I quite like it. So this time, let's make this a bit more straggly. Make it a bit more windswept, a bit more going on with the hair. be scared to put in random stragglers. When you first start doing this sort of thing, and you're adding in one or two bits of sort of random hair here and there, it can look a little bit weird. I mean, go for it. If you do too many, don't worry about it. Don't do too many next time. But it works. A lot of the time when people start drawing like this, they give up too early. They give up because it doesn't look exactly the way they want when they first start drawing. But if you kind of continue with it, you just sort of keep going, it'll start to come together. Again, especially for beginners, especially for young kids when they're learning to draw as well. It's thinking that everything has to be perfect, so if it doesn't look like it's spot on straight away, sort of giving up on it and then not actually finishing the drawing off. Whereas if you carry on, you just sort of keep going and see where it goes, and you can end up with some quite cool results. Okay, so we're getting a lot more detail in there. Again, this guy really haggard now. I want him to look pretty nasty, this one. I'll get a few more creases in there. I quite like the mouth on the other one, but let's see if we can take it a little bit further on this one. So let's get a little bit more drooping down the edge. I'm going to stick in a few nasty looking teeth in there too. Quite like that. Okay, we can go back in and we can refine some of this later on, but that's just kind of gives an idea. This guy's looking pretty nasty. Anybody watching along, anybody who does work digitally, if you're working in Photoshop, for me it's all I really work in these days. I've kind of experimented in the programs I've used a few over the years. Sort of Painter and Manga Artist, all sorts of stuff. But I always go back to Photoshop. For me, it's it suits the way that I work. So most of the brushes I use are custom brushes. For all of this, I'm only using the one brush, and it's quite a funky little thing. It's sort of for sketching, I set the opacity on 25%. Pick a dark grey, almost black, but not quite. And then again with this brush, it feels like you're sketching in pencil. It's sort of you get all kind of these little sort of variations and minor mistakes and things. It looks nice. At some point, I will make these brushes available to download. I'll stick them on my site when I get around to it. Okay, so this guy's looking pretty gnarly now. Quite like that. The arms I kind of like from the other one, to be honest. I think they work pretty well, so we'll stick with that. We'll just make them like with the rest of the character. We'll make it a bit more hairy, a bit more messed up. I'm not keen on this area of the other character around the leg, and it doesn't feel quite right. I think we need it doesn't feel real, is the thing. I mean, even though you're drawing monsters, you're drawing these weird little creatures and stuff. The fact that they're not actually real doesn't mean they can't be. Don't need to be based in reality when you're drawing them. So your anatomy or the physics of the actual drawing need to make sense. So if you've got these legs, you need a kind of a chunky thigh to attach to the body. Obviously that rule doesn't apply to everything. The thing is about drawing characters and cartoons, you can bend the rules. That's kind of half the fun. But it's easier to bend the rules when you know the rules are and when you know how to follow the rules in the first place. So if you know how to construct a face, you can then more effectively deconstruct a face when you're drawing a different character. If you know how to draw the body of an animal, you can then change things up and mix it around for when you're drawing your characters. But if you're starting from a point where you don't know how to do the real thing, it makes it much harder to do a really effective sort of cartoon version, I suppose. Let's have a look. Again, I'm not 100% on this guy's feet from the first drawing, so we're gonna mix these up a bit. Let's get some actual toes in there. Cool. Again, start off with the most simple shape. If you're drawing these toes, there are little balls on the end of the feet, so draw the balls in first and then start adding the details. Again, in a future tutorial, I'll cover how to construct most things really, animals, creatures, monsters, cars, birds, whatever, by breaking them down into sort of basic shapes. It's a technique for drawing that, for a lot of people when they're first starting out, is a really useful thing to get your head around. It's not initially the easiest thing in the world. It's less about drawing, it's more about the way you look at things. Just learning to look at things as shapes rather than kind of what they actually are. So things like a car. A car is effectively a box with wheels on it. So if you start off with a box, you can then take things away and add things and turn it into a car. But if you start just trying to draw the shape of a car, a lot of people will get stuck. You start off with the basic shape first of all. If you draw a bird is basically an oval shape. Circle for a head, triangle wing, triangle tail, triangle beak. And once you have those basic shapes in there, you can put the rest of the drawing together. That's another one for a future tutorial. Okay, very quickly going to finish this bit off around here. I quite like the hands from the old one. We're just going to rough them up a bit. Stick a bit of shadow on, try to add a bit more depth to be scared of adding shadow. It's something you get used to more the more you draw, but adding in dark areas onto your drawing is a good thing. It's just learning how to do it and know how to do it. Again, most of it comes with practice. There you go, there's our two different characters that came from pretty much the same drawing. I like them both, to be honest. I think they both look pretty well. One's obviously a little bit kind of more scary than the other, but they work quite nicely together. The next thing you can kind of do as far as I'm developing ideas is run tests. A really nice quick way of doing this. I'm going to show you quickly here on the right. Is figuring out colours for your character. There's a bit of a trick when you're doing this sort of character, is to keep colours sort of fairly limited. If you think of any of your favourite characters, whatever they're in, superhero comics, cartoons on TV, whatever, they tend to have a fairly limited colour palette. They tend to be below 5 colours, usually 4 colours, sometimes less. I think too many colours kind of tends to get a little bit confusing when you're looking at it, and it just doesn't stand out as well. So when you're colouring your character in, kind of limit your colours to sort of 3 or 4 really, maybe less. Okay, for this guy, very quickly, if you're using Photoshop, pick a colour, any colour. So we're going to go for a blue, kind of a light blue. Again, grab your brush, stick a new layer just behind your drawing layer. So my drawing layer is there, layer 4. Got layer 5. So I'm going to name this colour. Okay. On this layer, blocking the colour of your monster. Don't worry about staying the lines, don't worry about any of that. It's very loosely blocking the colour of your monster. Okay, and that's all done in one brush stroke. Because I've got this set to opacity 25, I can go over it again and I get that darker shade straight away. So just pick out where a few of the bits of shading are. Just to add a little bit of depth. Not changing the colour, just changing the opacity of the brush. It just allows us to get a bit of depth onto the character. Just pop out a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Doing that, you can literally just adjust the hue of this layer. Do it by going to image, adjustments, hue saturation. Okay, there's all sorts of shortcuts and stuff. Showing you through the simplest way to do it. You've got this nice hue saturation palette, and just look where you got hue, and then you can switch stuff along to the kind of colour that you like. So this will just test stuff out. You can copy this layer and the layer above it, so you can do them side by side. So you can see which you prefer for developing your characters. So let's just do that. Let's get rid of this guy on the left for now, and we'll just stick up with this guy in the centre. Let's duplicate both of those layers. Stick them side by side. Saturation, there we go. Do we prefer the purple? Do we prefer the red? You can sort of run a few tests, see which you prefer. Rather green. Let's have a look. Let's go for the sort of pinky sort of colour. I quite like that. Okay, and then you can literally start adding in more detail. So sample a piece of the darker section and use it on the same colour range. Pick a darker colour. And then you can start adding in those details. And again, this is where it comes in really useful, having the brush set at a low opacity, around 25%. It's almost like building up layers of watercolour or layers of pencil grain. The more you go over it, the darker it gets. Yeah, this is why I quite like working in Photoshop. It's quite a natural way of drawing. So anyway, we want some shadow in there. We can start sticking that in. Very quickly, just to show you. A bit of shading on the toes. Brush set on a low opacity, you can build up the layers, so you're not changing the colour at all. You're just adding in that shading by building up the layers of colour. I'm going to go back in, grab that red, and pick an even darker colour. Start putting on some marks. Let's get a few spots on this guy. Things about working in this way, if you don't like it, if you end up going all the way through and you don't like it, you've got these on separate layers, so your colour layer is separate, so you can just delete it and start again. We also have this one over on the left to go back to if we need to. It's one of the beauties about working in Photoshop, or working digitally in any way, to be honest. You can experiment a little bit more. Like I said at the beginning, most of the time when it comes to sketching initial ideas, when it comes to kind of laying out the shapes first of all, I always prefer to work on paper. It just feels a little more kind of organic. It's a nicer way to work. But the key is not to try and work in exactly the same way somebody else works. Just find a way that you're comfortable with working, and then just practice that. The stuff I'm going to show in these tutorials are starting points and guides and hints and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, if there are bits and pieces that you want to do slightly differently, or you want to just kind of take some of the things I'm showing you and then sort of run with it, go for it. adjustments, use saturation, test it out just to see if it kind of works on another colour. Some of these look quite cool. You work your way through, you can adjust the saturation, if you want a little bit brighter, a bit darker. See what you're happy with. To be honest, I quite like where we were. Okay, so let's just drop those guys out. This guy, very quickly, I'm just going to stick in a little bit full black on the drawing. We were drawing in kind of dark grey before, but if we stick a little bit of black in there now, just for a little bit more contrast. And don't be scared of using black on your drawings. It's a valuable tool. If you draw mostly in greys and colours and whatever else to begin with, you can then use black as a way to really make your drawings pop. If you start off in black, you can't go any darker. So you're better off starting a little bit lighter and then bring it in. If you paint it digitally anyway like this, I'd very quickly stick a few bits in there for extra contrast. This guy's head pop out a bit. It's quite a nasty looking guy. Cool. Okay, we'll leave him there for now. So there is our character. And this guy effectively came from all this. Just throwing out some shapes, just coming up with random ideas, little scribbles, dropping some circles on top of circles, making heads. We came up with this guy that we then went through and developed that guy, and then that guy ended up being that guy, and that guy is now that guy. So that's it, give it a go yourself. And if you can send me any of the drawings and stuff you've done, I'd love to see them. But literally, just start off throwing a few shapes down and just see what happens with them, just start adding in little bits and pieces. And if it doesn't look like it's developing in the right way, keep going with it, because you don't really know where it's going to end up until it gets to the point where it's unsalvageable. You can't really say where it's going to end up. Cool. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you again soon.